side thing I have.
We'll go ahead and get started. We got a big crowd here, so it's kind of keep it down.
All right.
My name is Greg Lambert. I'm from Oklahoma City University. I'm an electronic services and reference librarian. And I really get to run the labs there, mainly teach people how to use things, troubleshoot problems when they come along. And our system is set up so that we have two main labs, both of which are in the law library. We do have 4 computers over in the law school, which is in a separate building, but they're essentially for email purposes, not for research or printing. We have about 40 PCs, 25 in one lab and about 15 in another, and one set up as a classroom and the other one set up just as a research area. We had 2 laser printers, and they're both located in the lab with the 25 PCs, and they're both the HP 4000s. So we don't have any problems with making sure that one printer works and the other printer doesn't. They're identical, they're pooled, so that if one's being used, then the other one kicks in. That's kind of the background on there. Our printing policy probably started out like a lot of universities did. We went on the honor system, we put it in their student handbook that it's a violation of the honor code to print more than 60 pages a day. And we kind of stuck with that so students are getting used to it. The Lexis and Westlaw software was supposed to be, there was ways to set it up so that you couldn't print to the attached printer, but a lot of times that fail-safe didn't work or the code wasn't in right, and it never failed that we would print out thousands of pages over the semester of Westlaw and Lexis research material. And we also had generic Windows logons. So you come in, you type in lab or law, and it would log you on. And the bad thing about that was that everyone across campus knew what the password was. So it's hard to keep the people from the IT department out, or from computer science out, and log in without having to just run around and chase them off. So the director told us, well, we need to cut down on the printing. I think this is in the next slide, printing well over 200,000 pages in a year for students, and we averaged that out. It was about, a good estimate was about 10 cents a page between the cost of the paper, the printers, the toner. It ran about 10 cents a page. So that's quite a hefty charge. So you had to find something that was going to cut that down. But we didn't want to have something, we didn't want a card system. We didn't want to spend thousands of dollars. We wanted something fast, we wanted it cheap, and just get it in there and get it working. As long as it could limit them to 60 pages a day, we were good to go. She also didn't want to charge for printing. We charged them a computer services fee, and I don't know how, we charged $500 an hour, and then on top of that we charged them a fee for printing, and then on top of that she didn't want to nickel and dime the students to death. They were already paying enough. It was just a matter of putting in a limitation. So we looked at options for NT, and I think P Counter was coming out with an NT version. There were a few other NT products, but the one that caught our eye was the printing accounting server, which was made by Software Metrics. It's a Canadian company. I think they're out of Toronto. And they really won us over with the $595 price, which compared to other ones, it looked at it like a startup fee of around $5,000 was the minimum amount that we could go into some of the other systems, which included card systems or some of the other that would require also hardware. We upgraded to the Enterprise editions for $350 more. I think that we may have only paid $295 for that, but because we had told them that we were going to present here, so they gave us kind of a deal. I think normally it's about $600. But what the Enterprise Edition does is allows you to network multiple printers across the campus or across your network. So the single server edition will allow you to run it right off the print server, and which is still what we're doing, but we went ahead and bought this because it was a deal, and we're hoping that eventually we can upgrade the lab at the law school and get that one going. So last year we went to, remember we had the common logons. We went ahead and did mandatory logons where students would have their own individual user IDs and passwords, and that allowed us to integrate the printer accounting server with the NT network and just pull over the student IDs over into the printer accounting, so that when they logged on, then the printer accounting server kicked in and saw that they had so many pages of print for that day. Once that runs out, then it stops them. It also helps for running statistics. Yes?
Do they have to log on to the NT workstation or 95 machine in order to do that, or do they get a prompt for logging when they are issuing a print?
They have to log on to the machine itself.
Okay.
Otherwise,
so if the previous person leaves themselves logging on.
That's a problem that we had. If someone else left and someone else came in and sat down there, then they were logged on with this other person's ID and they could print with their.
Right.
But again, one of the good things and bad things, we do 60 pages a day, which if you run it out for the entire semester, was like 7,100 pages. But when we ran reports for last semester, we had 2 people that went over 1,000 pages, but the average was about 300 pages. And if you took the total number of law students that we had, of course, some of those never even came into the labs, but it was like 125 pages per student is what we were printing on average. So we kind of take the number of students that we have and figure we're going to do 125 pages. So over 2 semesters, or actually over the year, we've cut it down. We were well over 200,000 pages. And that's just an estimate because all we were doing was kind of looking back at, okay, well, we took 10 reams and we added up and we figured that, yeah, it went to the printer. So those aren't very good statistics, but we dropped it down to, within a year, we went to 140,000 pages. So that's quite a good drop that we had, over 100,000 pages dropped. The mistakes, and this is one of the other things, as the student does log on or leaves and doesn't log out and the next person comes in, the most that person can print is still 60 pages. Now they can log out, log on with theirs and print out the other 60 pages. But how we had it before was if someone had logged on, then there was no limit that we were going off the honor system. And some of the students just weren't obeying the honor system. So they would print out the bankruptcy code. For some reason the bankruptcy code seems to be the hot thing to print. But one of the other things that we do with the 60 pages a day is that other mistakes, such as they accidentally choose attached printer for Westlaw and Lexis, then the most that they can print out then is the 60 pages. So it kind of cuts down on the mistakes. So those were the problems that were solved. Here are some of the problems that were created. Before, the students kind of had unlimited, again, going back to the honor system, they were supposed to limit to 60 pages, but if they had a 100-page outline, they go ahead and print out that outline. Once it hits 60 pages, it will print out 60 pages exactly and then stop. And then a message will pop up on the computer screen that says you're currently out of funds.
Do they look at the previous days if they didn't print? Do they allow that to be added on?
You can set it up so that, actually there's 3 ways. And we have it set up so it goes 60 pages and stops. Another way is to set it up so that it spools complete, and if it verifies that it's over 60 pages, it will cancel it. And another one is that it will go ahead and print out the entire amount and then debit the account. Mm-hmm. The way we do 60 pages is that we've set it up so that each page costs 10 cents, and then at 1 o'clock in the morning, we have all the accounts refreshed to $6. So it comes out to to the 10 cents. On one of the problems that we also have is once I leave, then what happens if someone needs more paper? Usually, and the way we set it up is if they need more paper and they come to me and they say, I'm printing out this for my class, and most of the time I'll say, okay, fine, and I'll up the amount. It's usually not very much, and it would be more of a hassle to try to argue with the students than just to do it. But a lot of times once they hit that limit, then they just stop and go home or read the rest of it online. But if they come to me and they say, well, I got this 130-page outline, then I say, no, I'm not going to pay for your outline. I mean, that's something. If you can read 60 pages a day, you're a better law student than I ever was on reading those outlines. So, what would be the student reaction to that? At first, the students I had a few complaints, not as many as I was expecting. I was expecting everyone to be up in arms and heading over to the dean's office and shouting about how horrible this was that they paid. I always get the story of, I'm going to have $100,000 in loans by the time I'm through here, and you're going to restrict them. Yeah. But actually, there was very little complaints. And our other option that we looked at was giving them like a $500 up front and then charging them afterwards. And when I told them that was the other option, they were like, well, 60 pages isn't too bad. And especially when I broke it down to them that that's over 7,000 pages potentially in the semester that they could actually get. So the printer accounting server itself is set up, it's got three components. One is the services, and these components, the services are loaded up on the NT server. And how we have it set up, it's kind of funny. We're running it off the LPT1 and LPT2 ports of the server. And it's not, once you install printer accounting server, it actually creates a separate port, and it's called PAS LPT1 and PAS LPT2. And so those are how you set up your printers through those ports. And then, so the sharing, they're not available out there so that someone can bypass the printing accounting server. Okay? In order for them to print, they have to have an account on the printer accounting server. So it has the server and then the print monitors. We do it that way, but that's not the only way you can do it. If you can run it through IP numbers, if you have a direct connection to it, Mac services are available. You can run it through the Hewlett-Packard Jet Direct cards, things like that. So we just did it this way because it was easy. It was already set up that way, and we literally had someone drill a hole in the wall, ran the cords through the wall to the server, so that the server is still in my office, but the printers are out in the lab. So it's not pretty, but it works. The administrative tools.
So this is all user account based. Basically, those users in that particular group have the rights to print this report.
Yeah, and we have it set up so that students, we actually have the students broken down into first year, second year, and third year students, mainly for reporting reasons. That if I want to see who's doing the greater amount of printing, then that can be done. But I also have it where professors, staff, librarians are set up, and they have unlimited use, but it still will monitor them. So if you have one staff person that's printing out 4,000 pages a semester, then you can go to them and say, what's going on? Why are you doing this? So it is a way of monitoring the printing for those that you have hooked into it. Now, most of our staff have their own printers still attached to their computer, so we don't get into that area. So that was this system manager, which you can set up. Different pages can be different prices. So if you have envelopes, and you have legal size paper, and you have regular form, or you have form or regular paper, you can set those up so each of them run a different cost. And so if you have, say, for example, inkjet printer, you might want that at 5 cents a page, whereas a laser jet printer, you might want it at 10 cents a page. Or, I don't know, as much as those cost anymore, you might want to do the other way around. And then it has a cashier program, which is what, when someone comes to me and says, oh, I need 10 more pages, and then I go to the cashier, I just pull up their account, put it in the bucket, and off they go. Good question.
Did you say what you did when you were, when you went there?
The cashier program is also loaded on the circulation computers, and so all they need to do is, usually there's a lab monitor in there, and then the lab monitor, they'll talk to the lab monitor will go to the circulation desk and have them do it. Now, I didn't want it on the lab monitor's printer because most of the time the lab monitors are students, and so...
They typically tested.
Yeah, and, well, yeah, exactly. I didn't want them to have, that's kind of an administrative function, and I didn't want them to have that ability.
Greg, you said you had different accounts available to be set up, like your legal side, letter sides. Do they all add up to the total of 60, or do you have a 60 letter, so many pages of the envelope, so many of the legal?
Right. What we do is we charge 10 cents a page for regular 8.5 by 11 paper. So and we give them upfront $6 a day. And so if you have a legal size and you want to charge 12 cents, then they're not going to get 60, they're going to get 50, 40. So it's built on a cost basis. So it's a percent charge for the page, and then you have a total amount. So you don't put in 60 pages. If you set them all up as the same price, then yeah, everything would be 60 pages. There's also Workstation Tools, so that the student can look and see how many pages they have, or how much they have remaining in their account. And you can even set it up so that they can transfer funds from their account into another student's account. Now, they can't go into another student's account and transfer money back into theirs, of course. But if someone left and didn't log out, and we had that tool available, then they could do that. Now, that is traceable, so you can monitor who's getting what money, what transactions have happened. So if we did use it, we don't use that tool, by the way, just for that reason. But if we did use it, then we could track it down if there was ever an issue. You can also do the same functions through the web.
And can you use this with Windows 95?
Yeah, we do. I said we did have all NT machines. We have, I think, 6 left of 95, I think. But we're moving as soon as I can get rid of those and get new ones in. We're doing away. But yeah, we have them set up as long as they can log in. You have to go through the authentication, and if you don't match up, a guest user can't use it. So, which is nice because someone were to get on one of our OPACs and try to redirect, and then they can't get in because they don't have an account.
So you have to create a user name and also a computer account.
Yeah, and it's done automatically through the NT. It will look at your NT account and then just pull those over.
So that the 95 machine has to have a computer account on the NT.
Right. We do have the Windows logon or not Windows logon, but the Microsoft network logon. So, but again, as soon as I can get rid of those, I'm going to try. Talked about the Cashier Program also being installed on the circulation desk. Reports. I don't know about your library, but my library loves to run statistics and reports, and the director's like, well, can we find out who's doing this on Tuesdays, and and this is actually true, what's the main day of the week that things are being used, and it's quite logical on why you would want reports like that. And this is actually pretty nice because you can use Access or SQL or Oracle. It can create a rich text format of it, comma delimited, and then that can be emailed out to you as well. And I had that set up so that every day I get a report and in both common delimited and rich text that tells me of the two printers, how many pages that printer printed. Now the reports themselves can be extremely detailed, which is a little scary to me when the first time I saw this. But all of the information that comes across in the printer queue, that captures that. So that you know how many pages they printed on each individual transaction, but also the title of the document. So if it's got, in fact, I saw one the other day, and it was like a little porn site that track that student down. Can also do summaries, totals. This is where we can split it off so that I can look at, what's the percentage of faculty against students, or first years against second years against third years. And so it makes it kind of nice, and they're extremely easy. You can set up the date range, and what I like best about it is not only does it, you can manually put in the dates, but it's got a little drop down list that says yesterday, last week, last month, quarterly. You can set it up so that it already knows, or it has some defaults built in that you can just pick instead of trying to figure out. Let's see, Monday was the 14th, and trying to figure that one out. And it can also, you can archive the transactions, so you don't have to have those on the server all the time. You can just back those up onto a disk, and then, but if you still want to run reports on them later, you just pop the disk back in, and it will pull the archive reports from it. So our satisfaction on it, it's easy. It's very easy. We put it on, we upgraded it a couple of months ago from 1.1 to 2.0, and really, except for when a student comes to me and says, I need more pages, there's not much that goes wrong with it. Cheap. They were heavy. Actually, the one thing that I do like, here's the website. I'm not trying to sell this product. I'm just telling you how happy we are with it. So I guess I did get somewhat of a kickback from it since they gave me a reduced price. But the pricing on it, we don't have it hooked up. If you go to their website, though, they have their pricing listed on their website for academic and for commercial use. It's $595 for the single server edition, which is essentially all we're running. And then I think it's $1,195 for the enterprise edition, which would allow you to run across your network. And then you can also set up cashier machines, or what do they call this? It's not a card reader. Well, maybe it is a card reader, but it's you can go in, put your card, and a debit card charges $295 to set up one of those machines. But I was really surprised that they had all their pricing right there on their web pages. Very unusual for a company to put themselves out there like that. And they're custom. And actually, you can download a free evaluation copy of it, and they'll give you, I think, 60 days customer support, 45 days, 45-day evaluation, but they're extremely friendly. And because we went over that, and we called them back and emailed them and said, I don't, or I'm having problems. I didn't have time to look at it. And they were like, fine, here's another 45 days. So they were really good to work with. I wanted to hold off other questions if you had any until after David was finished with his. We'll stop that.
Well, my name's not David. I'm Phil Bolt from Pepperdine Law School. I'm the Associate Director for Computing Services, and it is my unique pleasure to be the guy that along with David crawls under the tables and plugs things in and that sort of thing. Let me get this thing going. Let's go ahead. We have about 650 law students. We have a lab with about, I think we'll have 44 machines installed here by the end of next week. We had 42 there for many years. And we have 4 high-speed printers. And we had a printing issue. So I'm not completely responsible for this title. Our story of getting the most options out of something that was not optional. We have to control printing. Long ago in Malibu, we had a Vendicard system where you had to put your card in to print. And we had 2 standalone printers, one for the Mac, one for the PC. And if you weren't working at that computer, you didn't get to print on laser. And it was centrally mangled by the university, managed by the university. And they controlled everything, toner, paper, and we're somewhat removed from the main campus, so it was kind of a pain. And we wanted to be able to have some control, offer our students some more options, offer network printing, try to be closer to the law firm environment. And we had to recoup our costs some way. And we could not impose a technology fee. It was just out of the question. So first we decided, okay, we'll just worry about recouping the cost. We need to get out from under the central university management of our printing. And so we went into an escape spiral, and we eventually went to Windows 95 machines, 4 high-speed network printers, and we didn't have free printing, we had what we called no additional cost printing. Because we didn't want anybody to feel entitled to free printing. We didn't charge them extra, and by golly, they printed like crazy. It was about 1/3 pages a year for a couple of years. And that was part of the spiral. So we wanted to recover our costs, or at least track the costs, impose some kind of accountability on printing. And it's not unlike what Greg's gone through, and that is people just printing out an outline for a friend, and maybe for an in-law, or an in-law's animals, that kind of stuff. So we had to go within the NT model. I'm kind of a Novell fan, but the university was moving to NT, so we were looking for NT solutions, and at that time, there were very few NT options. This was a couple of years ago. And I did a lot of poking around. I had some staff poking around. We came up with a couple of options, and we could write our own system. At that time, I was a staff of 1. With 25 law students, I might be able to count on for an hour at a time. So I didn't have somebody named Tom to program for me or anything like that. So we decided, look, they'll give us money. Why don't we buy something for money that we can pay money to have supported? So we decided to go with a solution called Uniprint. David's going to talk about that more in detail. One thing I wanted to do was get to a point where we could at least come close to a law firm environment. Nobody in a law firm was running around with a vendor card, putting a card in a card reader to print. I wanted centrally managed printing, some kind of accounting system that I could write reports from and do that sort of thing to at least emulate some kind of cost recovery system, even if we weren't going to charge them. To do what we wanted to do, and this was just another way to justify Uniprint, was I said we need to have individual user logons so we can do all this stuff and track printing individually as opposed to machine logins. With that, we can support the clinical law programs, other student programs where, say the law review has something going on, they come up and just print to their heart's desire. We can build a law review office back for all their bozo printing they didn't have to do. That's on top of course, their unlimited printing for Lexis and Westlaw. And I thought it would be neat. So that's my part. And I get introduced the delegation part of my work. Mr. David Dickens.
I do not even resemble a delegate. Well, like you said, they were all operating with Windows 95 on the desktop and Nobel print queues, which they watched in case things broke down or whatever, and they could cancel jobs if there were problems. And we were all, the whole university was marching off to Windows NT. So we had to do some changes to make things ready for Uniprint. Now, these, just basically what we had to do from a server point of view, set up a Windows NT, I should say server, because it doesn't require Workstation in the Workstation specs. It doesn't require anything that can print over Microsoft networking, so theoretically you can go all the way back to Windows for Workgroups if you really want to try to fit the drivers in for that, or from, I suppose you could even do this from Linux Worksboxes or whatever. Doesn't matter from the workstation point of view. The server point of view does have to be Server 4, Service Pack 3, and we do this is all TCP/IP based, and the back end is all held SQL. The whole database is a SQL database. Of course, to do that, we had to get new hardware. We really didn't have any server hardware. Phil had been lucky enough to have a spare PC, which was used as a web server at the time, and that was really it. So initially, what we did was we dragged another PC out of the lab, and that became the Uniprint server. Loaded these things onto that server. It didn't have very much. It was 64 megs of RAM, 2 gig hard drive, a Pentium Pro. No, not even Pentium Pro, Pentium 200. So it was pretty limited. We didn't stay there very long. We encountered some problems. The problems weren't wholly limited to the hardware, but there were limitations, and it was fairly slow compared to what we were able to do. We were able to get to support this Compact ProLiant 3000R, which was a big improvement with its much more memory capacity and speed, and that gave us the advantage to be able to do this on a higher level than we were able to do before. The lower campus had also been investigating various different print options. I say lower campus, the main campus. It's lower physically on the hill where we are, and in a lot of other ways. Spiritually, I guess. At any rate, they picked up Diebold. And I didn't like Diebold, and although I'm starting to like it a little more now that they've got a lot of work done on it. But they are using it everywhere. They have cards that go for practically everything you want to do on campus. You can spend money that way, but I didn't like it. I hate cards. I don't think anyone, when they're printing, no one wants to have to go to another machine and swipe and do things and mess around. I always hated that whenever I had to do it. So our advantage is we are completely transparent to the user. In fact, the only thing they see of the whole system is what I show them. There's a value, I think, for us running them independently, if for no other reason than crediting the system. Our main campus, I don't know about your main campuses, but my main campus wouldn't let me touch anything with a 4,000-foot pole. As far as graduate schools, we're the only one that gets to touch anything, but we still get very little access. And having very little access means we're never going to get to credit anyone's account for anything that has to do with money. So if we wanted to be able to say, oops, well, I guess the printer just chewed up 60 pages and charged you, if we wanted to refund that money, it was going to be a hassle. Moreover, that would mean passwords or card codes or whatever that was also all controlled by lower campus. Someone forgets a password, someone whatever. No. Better to do it ourselves. We did have to live with them, and we tried a couple attempts at being nice with them as far as trying to cooperate billing-wise. My understanding is that Diebold now has that Diebold and Uniprint have both made efforts to try and talk to their systems and talk to one another, and theoretically we could bill their Diebold account if they really wanted to. We even had a way to bill student accounts, but what we found out was, after a semester of using our system, with basically 500 pages worth of credit each semester, we only had about 10 students who went over that. And there wasn't, basically, the student account said, why are you going to send us a report with 5 students on it? We don't want to bother with that. So we said, fine, okay, we'll credit them ourselves. We'll handle the money. With only about 10 people doing it, it's not a big deal at all. I want to go over real quick, just give you a look at some of the ways this thing works. One of the things I like about it is the management console. I can, if I want, have my users, my technical users, not have any access to an MT box, but have access to the Uniprint management console, because everything is actually controlled from inside of this console. We can go to users, and we can look at the list of users and all their various information, edit all their information. We can set whether they their various different options. If you want, you could use an arrears option and bill them periodically for their printing. I can promote them to proctor or to cashier, which allows them to modify their own amount of money. Obviously, that's very unusual. I would do that. It takes its group, notice one of the listing things in there, it takes its group from the group in NT that they belong to, the first group that they belong to in the list. So it automatically develops those things. Obviously, I want to type in the 1,300 users that I have, so while I can credit and edit material in here, what I really want to utilize is their batch load users feature, which actually pulls right out of the NT user base at any given time, runs a massive batch file trying to add every single NT user to the system. If they're already added, it ignores them. If they aren't added, it'll credit whatever I say. It'll skip on blank full name for those accounts which I don't want to have any Uniprint credit. For example, administrator in my domain, or guest in my domain, or whatever. Excuse me. And of course, down here, does not belong to group, belongs to group in a particular group, or it can extract the group also from the comment that's in the NT user database. So, I mean, it's just pulling the information out of there. And again, this doesn't require any particular access in the NT user database. It's all you running using the management console's permissions. There's various different things we can do with the management console, including viewing the various different transactions on the fly, giving the people's names, the times, the particular printer credit on, the credits, and etc. We can use various different methods that we want to use to delineate who we're looking at, what time we're looking at, and to cut down on the list here. Cutting down the list is a good thing, because while I don't care if there are 10,000 transactions in the SQL database, I don't want my local workstation trying to load all of them into the transaction mode of the console. Very similar look for viewing alerts. Someone attempted to print who didn't have any ID in the system. Probably someone trying to print from a 95 machine that wasn't logged on to the NT domain, or was logged into the NT domain but was logged on to the Pepperdine domain, the Dollar Law domain, or whatever. Anyway, it lets me know if someone tried to print who wasn't allowed to. And of course, we can archive all that data pretty simply. It dumps basically to a CSV file, and you can dump any of the different data tables that it uses. Like I said, it's all controlled from inside this management console, and so I don't have to have a student worker who knows how to set up an NT print queue. If I want them to add another queue to the system, they can actually go in here and add another spool queue using the interface here. It actually sets up the NT printer for me on my behalf. We can set various different devices, and there are several different ways you can do direct printing, or you can spool it to a print station where they have to walk over and say, I want to have my job printed. Theoretically, this will work with swiping cards if you're just so desperate to use them. And it has different load balancing. It can either balance equally between all the printers, or it can go to the one that's the least used. I've noticed that in fast mode, or I think it's fast mode, yeah, in fast mode, there is one problem, and that is if the printers are in power save mode, it knows that. And so it thinks that it's going to take too long to go to those. So we actually have, if I turn on fast mode, I actually have a lot more of my printing coming out of one printer because it's the one that's active. If it only has a page left to print, it knows, this thing knows it's going to get to print on that one before those other printers warm up. It's a little too smart for its own good. And of course, like I said, on each queue, how I want to charge for it. This is the very simplest way to charge. There are complex cost center constraints that I'm not going to go into, that you can do all sorts of things that even have combination effects, so that you can discount for duplex printing, since they're saving paper, but charge them more at the same time for printing on tabloid. So if they print on tabloid duplex, it puts it through an entire mathematical formula to come out with whatever should be an appropriate charge for that particular type. You can install printers on here as well. In fact, these are all our printer queues. These are the actual printers that are hidden from the user on the NT server box. And I'll explain how that works in just a second here. I'm trying to think of how best to describe this. Each of the queues that is visible, that is shared to a user, is attached in this printer-spool relationship to whatever printers you want it to go to. Notice that I have 4 printers, HP 5SI1, HP 5SI2, HP 8K1, they're 8000s, and HP 8K2. The 5SI2 is for all of our special printing, binder paper, envelope, manual feed, which is essentially for resumes, and tabloid printing. And the default lab queue, so you hear me about to add, the last printer that's not available there, manages all 3 of the other printers. So we've got here a system connected to a bunch of printers, our lab computers, which then connect to that server. We also have to have the availability, because we've removed the local printing for our, our laptops. We have to be able to print from those from our study carrel. So those also log into the NT domain, and we have to do various changes with our login script to make sure it doesn't happen. And the server thinks all the fun SQL things to make it all work. The way this thing works is basically a sort of a bucket and hose proposal. It has a visible queue that everyone can see, that everyone can attach to, and it's paused. It's pointed to nothing, and all the print jobs just pile up there. And the service, the Uniprint service, watches that bucket, and when it sees something there, it looks for that person's user account, looks to see if they have sufficient credit, pulls the job out of that bucket, and pops it into the hose, actual printers on the printer that can't be seen over the network. You could do it either locally on LPTs, or you could have HP direct ports over TCP/IP, which is what we have. There are obviously some problems with that. The one important thing to think about here, though, is that those settings need to be synchronized. One of the reasons why I have all my special queues, all my special printing types on one printer, and all those queues going to one printer, is if someone sends an envelope into the default lab queue, when it goes to move it over to one of the other printers, if those other printers don't have envelopes enabled, it'll crash NT printing. It's not Uniprint, it's NT that's crashing. But I guess it's a flaw in their design. I kind of like the idea that everything is in SQL 6.5 because I can do a lot of other things with this. It's all based off straight ISQL commands in batch mode. I could go in theoretically and edit every single operation and how it does what it does and what it adjusts and what it checks. That would be a little extensive, but it's not as hard as it would seem. And the nice thing about it is that they'll help you do that, and I've experienced that several times. I like it because it's compatible with a lot of other things. Obviously, it pulls in all the user accounts from the NT user database, but I can also use that SQL database for a lot of other things. So it kind of kills a lot of birds with one stone for me. Some problems. sorry, I just skipped that one. I'm going to go with the top one there. Memory leaks on transaction logs. I don't know how much you guys all know about SQL, but when you delete an item in SQL, it creates a log that you deleted it. If you have so many items that you're trying to delete that the database is full up, oftentimes you don't have any space in your database for the transaction logs of your deleting of those items, and therefore you cannot get rid of them. It crashes every time. This was a problem when we had errors occurring like mad. When I first set up the system, didn't set it up quite right, and the system just went on fire one afternoon and generated literally 100,000 error logs that then I had to actually go in and delete the entire table in SQL and recreate it to get rid of it. When you're using the management console, it locks up all the queues. The SQL database can't be accessed, and since it can't be accessed because you're changing it, they can't print while you're doing it. I've been trying to credit someone's account, someone will come in, I can't print. The problem with pause, all the printer queues that people can see are paused, and people invariably come in and say, my print job didn't come out because the printer is paused. How do we fix that? I can't unpause it because, of course, they don't have permission to do so. Unfortunately, some of my student workers don't know any better, and they unpause the machine. Well, if you unpause the machine, the bucket's got a hole in it, and it falls out, and print jobs go through too fast into a null file that's nowhere, and the system never has a chance to grab the print jobs. So this is a real problem. All my printers are on running TCP/IP, and they're all available to anybody. I mean anybody. Theoretically, people could print over the internet if they really wanted to. Before I put my pages up on the internet, I think I'll be trimming out all the IP addresses of my printers. But this is also a real problem locally. Anyone with a Mac can see the printers listed over the net. And anyone with enough knowledge to use HP JetDirect on an HP can do the same thing. There are simple solutions. I could use LPTs right off of the print server. I could also put a little router or something and trim off all the IP addresses that are allowed to have access to those printers. Either way is a pretty simple solution. We haven't had the need to do it yet. One of the things I really like about NT is also the support. When I got my job a year and a half ago, I run one of the few NT servers on campus, but it wasn't a print server. In fact, I didn't know a whole lot about how to deliver, particularly how to deliver drivers, because you don't want the person to have to use their own 95 diskette or 98 diskette or their own printer drivers. You want to serve them up those print drivers when they attempt to connect to the printer. I didn't know how to do that. CDP Icon, who we actually bought the program from, knew how to do it. And they spent hours and hours with me teaching me how to do it. And a lot of other things. Customizing the program, customizing our particular settings. The guy was very knowledgeable. He was accessible. He gave me his ICQ number. And yes, I do run ICQ on a network server. You can yell at me later. And another thing I liked was the fact that it was so easy to show my lab assistants how to do things, including crediting people. My lab assistants are allowed to credit people. Most of them aren't law students. Most of them are undergrads. And this is all controlled by the NT accounts in our domain for law students, so no one else has access to the lab. If my student workers want to credit themselves, sure. They work for me. They deserve some sort of perk because I don't pay them enough. But if they get a hand, every credit is logged. I can look back and see who credited whom and when they credited them and for how much. Again, I said SQL was kind of nice because it allows you some bonus things. I can do offsite support for this over TCP/IP. I can load the management console on my computer at home. I could load it here and run the printers from here if I wanted to. That's a nice feature. It's also security hole. You'll want to be careful about what sort of permissions you set and security you set. I actually think that the biggest way this has been a success for us has been the fact that every time a student logs in, there's a little ISQL script that pops up in their logon script, and it says you have X number of money left on your printing. And just the fact that they're reminded every time they log on that they have something called credit and they have only so much of it left, means they don't print very much. Like I said, only about 10 people go over. Well, now we're letting them have a few more pages than 500. I think it's more like 800. But there's almost nobody going over that amount, just because they're reminded every day not to print out Emerald's entire cookbook. And I think that's been a real big, a real significant advantage. I also I want to put into my log-on script and let them know where the lab assistants are sitting. We often have more than one lab assistant available at any given time, if we can do that. And oftentimes they don't like to sit what we call a lab assistant computer, because when the air conditioner's on, it's 40 degrees in that chair. I have some measure of sympathy for them, so when they log on, it says, so-and-so is your lab assistant, they're at such a desk. It uses the same SQL database that is used to record all the printing, so I can multiple use all that information. I could even use that information and attach their student schedules, do an export out of our mainframe of all the student schedules, combine the two databases, run all sorts of things like scheduling that a lot of people I've noticed at this conference have been getting into. I can also charge them for something else. If I want to charge them for whole professor's tests, I know that's kind of a silly prospect, but I can do it and still access the same centralized account. So this can become an account for everything at the law school.
So this works with the NT logon. As they log on, this will send all those prompts and messages?
Correct. And I can have it do as much or as little as I want, because it's just a matter of being scripted. And MySQL is available. The program I use, the interface on the command line is easy enough to use. I can put in whatever information I want. So, as the sun sets over Pepperdine, I give a little credit to the people who made this all possible. I love it. We've had problems, but when we've had the problems, they've been incredibly there for us. I've been really, really surprised. Ferris is the company that actually designs the software. You may be able to purchase it directly from them. I think they have a U.S. corporation now. But we actually got through CDP Icon, division of Icon Corporation. Great support. Great support. All manner of weird things that I wouldn't have thought I could have called them up to get support for. They were happy and more than willing to do. That's it for me. Anyone got any questions for me?
We got the Novell network, and we're printing it on to the Novell. One is the red card is on the printer, the other one is the server has the Q on it. And we go through many times a week, a few times a day even, that the jobs are sent and nothing happens. It's just closed. And we do all different things. Turn off the printer, wait 5 minutes, turn it back on. That works sometimes. Re-log on the machine to the Novell. Restart the server on the print queue on the server, and to get it to come on. Now, I want to know your experience with this product, which is NT-based. How much trouble do you run into? What kind of volume do you print, and how many times you have to deal with this kind of issues?
Let's see. Our volume is way down. I think that from student printing, we were down from, like you said, somewhere close to 1/3 pages, somewhere down to like 100,000. So we've cut it in a third as far as the actual physical number of print jobs goes. As far as dealing with the fact that a printer has crashed or whatever, that's something that has to be taken care of by whoever's watching. You can take printers out of the queue. You can spread the printer out between a number. You can spread the queue out between a number of different printers so that it can go to anyone that's available at the time. Like I said, if one's in power save mode, it's in the fast mode. If one's in power save or if it's locked up or whatever, it's not going to go to that one. The last job gets hung up.
But is the job getting hung up because of the printer, or is it because of the queue?
Yeah, I've never had it happen because of the queue. The only time I ever had a problem is when a printer jams in the middle of a job.
Okay, well, there's definitely no jam problem. It just doesn't make it.
I haven't had any problems with that at all. The queues themselves, the print queues, have been very reliable. The only problem, like I said, people can unpause the printer. Some of my student workers who didn't know any better, because they'd have permission to do so, unpause it and cause problems. That's your question?
Yeah, so I just want to get some statistics on the amount of trouble you run into with this kind of thing.
Very low. That's not the problem we've had. We've had other problems. Anybody else?
This is probably for either you or Greg. With all of this process and everything going on in the background when a student sends a job to go print, have either one of you, either from the student complaints or noticed any slowdown with the printing? Is that what this is running in the background and keeping track of everything? No?
Now, in fact, we have it set up, and actually I think as I left, this wasn't working, but we haven't pulled. They have 5 printers, we have 2, so ours is a little easier, and ours are right next to each other, and when one's printing out, and it prints out to 8, 12 pages a minute, and so speed-wise, it hasn't slowed them down any.
We have, all of our printers are high speed, so we've never really encountered a problem. Now, there have been occasions when people have changed their Westlaw or Lexus setup to print to the lab printers instead of the other printers because they were in a hurry, or those printers were down. When they're down and you have 20 people trying to print Westlaw stuff and they're using our printers and they're all printing out 500 pages, well, anything's going to be slow then. But when it comes to regular lab use,
Yeah, it doesn't do any, it hasn't affected the printer speed at all.
anybody else?
Where are you getting the money to pay for the sheets that you are giving to them? Do you have provision, line item, or pull it from whatever's available?
Yeah, we have a separate account, not for printing, but for computer supplies, of which paper, toner, all that comes out of. So we budget for that at the beginning of the year.
That's what we do too.
And what was the cost on your setup?
Ours wasn't cheap. It was $3,500 over times 3. We signed a 3-year contract, and that included the license to the software, unlimited support, and that was two printer queues, 1 server. We added 2 more printers to that. That was another $1,000. So it's about $4,500 a year.
Plus you had to buy SQL Server.
Needed that anyway. I mean, it was really important to have the database facilities. It just gave us a good excuse.
The real cost was the compact. That guy was not cheap.
Yeah. In ours, we didn't buy a new server at all. We just stuck it right on the same server we've been using.
So you're saying you need a separate purchase of Microsoft SQL for this to work?
You have to.
But isn't that a component that's built in? Or?
It's required that you have to have NT Server 4 SP3.
Okay.
You're going to have SQL 6.5, also Service Pack 3. And those are costs you're just going to have to front. The educational pricing on both of them is dirt cheap. Actually, at Pepperdine, although this wasn't the case when we actually bought it, now they'd be free essentially because our university has a contract with Microsoft. If they make it, we have a copy of it.
No additional cost.
It's not free.
It's not free. There are no extras. Anything else? Cool.
Get out here.
Thanks very much.